Welcome back. It's now 5 minutes away from 7 o'clock, and as promised before the break, we're sitting down to speak with the president of the Association of Professional Engineers of Belize, Wilfredo Guerrero. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. I think it's an opportunity to promote engineers as far as visibility, because what happens is that most of the times we are invisible. People don't realize that they rely on an engineer for the lights, for the water, for all these facilities that they enjoy and take for granted. And so this is an opportunity to speak with you all about engineering, and especially about the problems that we are faced with right now in Belize City.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the association. How long has that been around, and what are the stated objectives?
Okay, the association came into effect in 2001 when an act was passed, the Engineer Registration Act. Our main function is to make things in Belize work properly in the benefit of the public. We are supposed to protect the public from all these disasters and so on. Sometimes it's hard for us to reach there because there is a lot of political interference and fear of being fired and that sort of thing. And it's a sad story, but we are basically supposed to take care of society, giving them a safe environment. But generally, when we cover all these areas like electricity, water, telephone, sanitation, all these areas.
How many members do you have in the association?
Right now we have financial members about 111.
Okay. Now, of course, the benefit of having formal organizations or associations like this one is that people know where to go to get legitimate and registered engineers to do work for them. How do you facilitate or promote that purpose?
Well, we have a website on which we have posted all the members that are registered. The website is www.apebelize.org.
So people can go there to get that information.
People can get that information.
Okay.
And we also have a secretariat which they can write to, and based on what they see on the website as to how to contact us, right? So. And we would respond.
Okay. Now, let's talk about one of the issues that Belize City is currently facing. We saw over the weekend what has been, it seems to be close to the record-breaking, 23 inches of rainfall over the span of 2 days, which is far more than many of us have seen in Belize City. We speak often about being at or below sea level in certain areas. In terms, from an engineering perspective, the work that has been done in Belize, not just the public work, but even the construction that's taken place with private homes and whatnot, what are some of the real challenges that you see?
Well, the real challenge is that people don't know that they are sitting on a hydraulic area, which is not an ordinary firm land area, and there are certain limitations at what they could do. In general, people who do like a spread footing or people who do their piling are fairly all right. the problem that exists, I think, is that we don't put much attention to drainage. And in a hydraulic area like this, it's very important. It's very low, it's very flat, and we need to establish clear drainage paths.
When you look, just let me interrupt for a second, because when you look at the network of canals that were established in Belize, at one point people saw it as a really more an eyesore and a problem than anything. And it seemed to have lost its function in terms of the way the public view it. Was it just because it had fallen into disrepair and people didn't understand the real emphasis behind having that system?
Well, the system of canals has been very efficient. In the earlier days where people used to dump their night soil, and we had a lot of problems then. But since we have the sewer system and the water system, that problem has been reduced considerably.
Okay.
But the canal system is one of the most practical systems for Belize City. Why? Because if you didn't have that canal system, you would have to pump out all that water with a pump. Whereas the canal system allows a conduit for this water to flow into the sea and just disappear, in the sense that the little rain that we have here won't raise the ocean by any significant amount. But if we have these waters channelized to go to the sea, that's a big plus. Now, I want to say that if you notice, the older part of Belize City doesn't have a problem. It's the newer part. And my parents used to say that in the old days, where the Fort George Hotel is, they used to go fishing. And they have reclaimed that area, but it has been reclaimed in the proper way. When you do dredging for reclamation, you're looking at material that is granular. And so that area for George, the whole north, all the way up to Kings Park, has been filled in a proper way. You get a granular fill, it drains out, and after a while you can use the soil. However, a group of people came from Panama and they introduced clay. Now, clay is the worst thing that you could have, because clay does not permit water to pass through. We depend on the soil to filter that water into the water table. Now, so if you notice, the older part of Belize City is not in such a bad state, okay? But the newer part is a disaster. And we have to make sure that we replicate that system of canal every so many feet, because the canal creates a conduit and we can put side drains to feed into the canal, and the canal does its work.
Now, the other question I had was, very often when you have a system of canals, you may also have gates that are controlled to allow water to go into certain areas or to control the flow of water. Would that improve the flow, or is it just that we simply don't have enough canals to deal with the burgeoning areas of a city?
Well, I think what you're referring to is lifting the gate and let water move. Unfortunately or fortunately, we don't have that tidal difference.
Okay.
Okay, so it doesn't really work that well. Some of these people come in and say, "Oh, we're going to make a tidal flush." That's very applicable in a place like Guyana, where the difference in tide is significant. But here in Belize, it's 18 inches. What can you do with that? You know. So we rely on this canal system because it is a practical way, it's an economic way to evacuate the water. Now, what happened is that when you have a pond and so, you try to capitalize that for storage. But what happened is that the trend is to fill that up and put houses on top, you know. So we have to learn to live with nature. We can't just...
It's interesting that you're saying some of these things, because the areas that we've seen develop in the last, let's say, 20 to 30 years, as the city continued to burst at its seams, had more to do with not really reclaiming, but simply settling in areas that were swampy. And we saw a proliferation of London bridges and people going to those areas, and not infrastructure improvement or even infrastructure placement in those areas to really deal with it. Maybe a road would be put in place simply because enough people lived in a particular area. Is it too costly and too unrealistic now for us to go in and introduce canals and all of those things really being introduced in those areas to deal with the flooding that we know will become even more of a reality?
Do you have a choice? I mean, you have to have the will to do it. I mean, if you could ask a number of experts. I have a report right here, where there's a big report, but I just extracted, that this guy is saying we have to keep the spacing of the canal for new development. And what he's saying, that we have to have a development plan, where we're going. And based on that, and the canal, the placement of canal is going to dictate what's going to happen. So the canal system is really important if we are going to avoid some of these things.
Who did the report that you're speaking of?
This was a report that was done pre-independence by a firm named Richards and Doubleton. It was a good report. These guys did a lot of walking, and they did a lot of conclusion, and they came up with this idea that the newer sections are in worse shape than the older sections. They probably didn't stay here long enough to know why. And I just gave you the reason that prior to the group coming in and using clay, we used to select our spoils. We used to do investigation, what sort of material we will get if we dredge. And we would dredge material that would be suitable for fill. No, I don't think clay is suitable for fill. It might be suitable for other things, you know. But it's kind of difficult for it to drain anything. I think, coming back to your concern, I think we can still salvage this thing if we decide to have a plan where the canal plays an important role. And if we try to get fill that is granular rather than clay, we can solve a lot of problems.
Now, as you mentioned, this is a part of a conversation that has been ongoing for a very long time. And a lot of it has been traced back to the cost that is associated with installing the drainage that the city needs. We're also facing changes within the climate change aspect. We've seen rains at suspicious times. We're seeing this heavy downpour. We've been told about the inevitable rise in the sea levels as the years progress. All of these things put into perspective, how much have you seen the landscape change over your years of experience?
Well, I haven't seen much changes there, to be honest, you know. I used to live on the north side. I'm not so familiar with the south side, except for some drainage that was done there by, what's the name of this road? Not Faber's Road, the other one.
Neil Penn Road.
Neil Penn Road, yeah. I think climate change, we don't have to worry about climate change right now. We are very vulnerable, as you can see. But when the sea level rises, we'll be in worse shape. We won't be any better than we are right now. And we should think about a plan to either abandon Belize City, which I don't think you want to do that, or doing what the Dutch have done, where you empolder the area and you control the flow of water. That's possible. That's an option. I know a lot of people like to live on the coast. Yeah. You know, I myself, like, I feel happy when I come and I could drive around and smell some sea salt air, you know. But with climate change, it will be worse.
So what you're
it's going to happen.
What you're saying is that the canal system is the right way to go.
It is.
But we need more canals.
We need
a more structured system.
We need to do a plan. And in that plan, the canal will have to play an important role. And if we are thinking about sea level rise, we have to empower, put dikes around the city, and have strategic points where we will use that sluice. When we can release water into the ocean, we lift the sluice. I think we have this in Dangriga, you know. We have a system like that in Dangriga. I don't know if they operate it, but it's there.
One of the things, we were joined by Mayor Bradley yesterday, and we spoke about this, obviously the drainage issue, and one of the things he spoke about was just the buildup of the silt and the sedimentation within the canals itself, and what it takes to drain that out, to dredge that out, I'm sorry, because the water won't flow, obviously.
That is a problem, but I can deal with that problem. And I have told Public Works that I can deal with that problem, but they don't seem to.
How would you deal with it?
You see, there's always sediment coming down.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is to have like a groin going out, so that you build it so that you could put a machine on it, and when this sediment is built up enough on this side, you go and you clean it, but it doesn't block your flow, because it doesn't reach there. The ground would be like this, and the silt would be here, right? And here is your outlet, so it doesn't even reach the outlet.
Now, hydrology talks about the flow of water from rivers into the sea and all of that. Am I correct in that?
No, you're not correct. Hydrology is rainfall.
Okay.
It's a study of what falls. Hydraulics is when the water starts to flow.
Okay.
Meteorology is when what water is up in the cloud. So there are three fields there that...
So how do they intertwine, and how do you talk about, because, for example, one of the things that we've been told that perhaps Belize City will have more flooding as we have the waters coming that fell as far as Guatemala, for example, and come down in our waterways. So what does that come under, and how do you control those in terms of the connection then with canals?
I don't think that there is a threat of that, you know. There is not a threat because everything is flat and you have a lot of water around, you have this Borden Canal, you have a lot of protection that would not allow that to happen. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned Guatemala. We did a study in 2009, and it fell short of any action. People just ignore the study, but I see it as a great potential for us to start from the Halover Creek with basic equipment, 2 pontoons, an excavator, and we work our way up all the way to San Ignacio. You remember when we could have gone to San Ignacio by boat? We cannot do that anymore. Think of the potential for tourism. If we were to do something like that, we would clear our rivers. All these villages along the way would be free from flooding.
What purpose would it serve to be able to do that?
What's that?
What purpose would it serve to do that?
Well, it would clear the waterway for navigation. It would clear all these stumps that are causing local flooding in the villages. And it would go far for tourism. You know, how many people would like to go to San Ignacio by boat? You know?
It's interesting. Now, I want to ask one other question, at least, with regards to the whole canal system, because you talk about the Borden Canal, which is at mile 5 on the Western Highway. Was that man-made or?
Man-made.
Because, no, I ask you that question specifically because some of the canals that we have, while we understand that generally the canals are man-made, they've become such a part of the city's structure that we take it for granted that they weren't. So we don't understand how significant the canal system was. Do we have any kinds of maps, etc., that show the network of canals and what could possibly be done to actually include a similar system in the parts of Belize City that are recently developed, like the Belamas, phase 1, phase 2, up to 4, and the Port Loyola and those areas?
Yeah, this report that I refer to had covered those areas, and what we have to do is to make sure that we put the canals at intervals that are not too far apart, not too close, based on our historical experience. But I don't know what's the problem with Belama, but I thought they had canals there.
They are instituting some another flood mitigation project. But is it because people view it as old technology that has lost its relevance?
Well, it hasn't lost its relevance because water will flow anyway, right? So, but the thing is that part of the recommendation is that we line these things, not leave it there for it to fall and get clogged up and so. So we have to have a program to line these canals and a program to do maintenance.
So it wouldn't be only embankments, but it will also be a floor of sorts?
Well, it depends. It depends on what money you have, you know. If you don't want to do the floor at this time, you could do what we call sheet pile. You could pile, and that's a very practical way to do it, you know. But then, if your place gets too urban, you might want to line it, you know.
Okay.
And it depends on the money you have. I think we should we should live within our means. We shouldn't try to have grandiose things and don't have basic things for most people. We should think about the whole picture.
Now, let's talk a bit about infrastructure, because that's a part of the issues that we saw houses that fell over the weekend, and we have been seeing, since the rains have started, quite a few fall so far. Some argue that they're old, not properly built. But I remember after Katrina and the floods in New Orleans, there was a very big conversation about going back to infrastructure, some that we still see here, of houses on stilts. They call them hurricane-proof or flood-proof. We don't see that as often. Obviously, for economic reasons, it's easier to build low than to build high. Is it something that realistically we should consider in Belize, if you're living in Belize City, considering just the landscape that we live in?
Definitely. Definitely. We started out with our houses on stilts, and that's because when the hurricane comes, provided our house survives the hurricane, we have a place to live in. But the water, the flood water, doesn't affect us that much. And if we have a good house that we have confidence in, we can stay there.
We've moved away from that a lot.
We have, yeah. People think that, and it could be done in a practical way. I mean, you have your house with stilts, you have your garage down there. You could do a lot of little things down there, right? But we are copying other people. That's the problem, you know. And we have to do what is
suited for
appropriate for us. We can't be copying people, you know.
All right.
Now, before we wrap the conversation, what would be your recommendation in terms of, can we reclaim the areas, especially that we need to, in a way that would be suitable to address our challenges?
Of course, engineering is like that. Anything is possible. If you have the will and you have the money, you know, it's possible. But what I would say that we need to do a good study as to what, and we have to specify the type of fill and that sort of thing. We can't just be out there like cowboys, you know. We have to be scientific, otherwise we'll suffer. And this is what's happened. We have put a lot of money in these concrete streets without drains. Drainage is a very important element, and I am fearful about this drainage, but all these things could be rectified, because when water goes into a yard, then you have mosquitoes, and then you have all sorts of vectors and disease and whatnot. And I'm concerned because these are poor people. I mean, we have to treat them with dignity. But there's a lot of things that could be done. You just have to have the will and have the science behind it.
Now, and the final thing before we wrap, because we must, we have not done a lot in terms of conquering the landscape, so to speak, like in other places where you can build a bridge for 3 miles, 4 miles, whatever distance. And you talk about costing, and even we look at the Northern Highway and how it meanders due to the river and being caught between the river and the sea. Is it realistic for us in terms of, do we continue what we're doing in terms of engineering, just take the path of least resistance like water, or do we actually try to conquer it and utilize what we have in the best possible way?
I think the best answer to your question is we have to have a long-range plan, okay? We can't just abandon something for something that is a little dubious. Many years ago, there was a French engineer that came under the United Nations Technical Assistance Board, and he dreamt up a coastal road north. Coastal road, following the coast. And, well, that plan is no longer, because they have given out all the land and so, right? But we have, this is another topic I would like to talk about, is traffic. You go, I don't know where all these vehicles come from. You know? And I think that at some point in time, we have to see how we can solve that problem. I was going to present a paper in Cuba this month. I have an abstract that I had worked on, but it's reaching the point where it's becoming unsustainable. So it's a topic that would be...
Yeah. And all of these things
future.
come with planning as well. And we've heard, obviously, the arguments that if people aren't independently mobile, they don't have a reliable public transport system, so the options are limited as well. But that is a conversation we need to have as well.
I also want to take this opportunity to say that we have a lot of people there with problems, small problems, and I'd like to see the association be able to reach these people through programs that will address their concerns. Let them write in to say what their concerns. We have a program, and we have interaction. They can ask questions. But who's going to pay for that? That's the problem, you know. And how do we get this in production? But we would like to do that, because we have a lot of people who suffer for very little reason. Their problem is small, but for them it's a big problem, because they go to this one and they tell them this, they go to the other one and tell them something different, and they don't know what to do. Yeah. And we would like to see how we can help these people. That's an offer, if you ever want to take it up.
Well, Mr. Guerrero, it has been very eye-opening speaking with you, and we want to thank you for joining us this morning.
Okay.
All right.
And thank you for having me, and I'm hoping that you would pay more attention to engineers and what they do, because engineers do a lot for the community, but they are invisible. People don't realize that when they wake up in the morning and they open the faucet, is the engineer who has caused that, has made that possible, or the lights, or even the roads, the buildings. And we have to fix this country.
All right.
You know, we have to fix this country.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be to talk to a special motivational speaker who's here as a part of the activities for Cancer Awareness Month. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Open Your Eyes after these messages.